I think we're ready to go. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, thank you. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Missoula City Council meeting of August 3rd, 2020. All council members are now present for this virtual Zoom meeting. You see on your screen ways to connect for public comment this evening. We have no minutes to approve this evening, but we do have a schedule of committee meetings. Ms. Rabine, I don't know if that's you or Ms. Hands this evening. Ms. Rabine, you're muted.
I'm muted. Hang on just. We have a fairly full slate of committee meetings this coming week. Newsflash for everybody who's watching our council meeting tonight. We are going to be hosting all of our committee meetings via Zoom webinar on this coming Wednesday. And that means that if you've joined the meeting tonight, you'll be able to use the same method to join our Zoom meetings on Wednesday. So the public can visit a public event page called www.missoulameetings.com and register to attend any one or all of these webinars if you're interested. The first webinar for Wednesday is going to be the Land Use and Planning Committee. We're going to start that at 10:45 in the morning and go until 11:45. Administration and Finance Committee will meet from 12:05 to 12:20 in the afternoon. Public Works Committee will follow from 12:50 to 1:10, and Budget Committee of the Whole will round out the day from 1:30 to 4:45. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any changes to that committee schedule this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to the general, we'll move on to the general public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening. And I have one participant interested in that. Matt Slarson.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. Nice to see you all. I'd like to, again, stress the importance of in-person meetings for these City Council meetings. I believe that its current format quells public commentary, especially for those of us that are less technically inclined, maybe Luddites. It's hard even for the most technically inclined for us to participate in this in a meaningful manner. I've been going to the City Council meetings for I think about a year now, and I recall before this pandemic at least 15 to 25, even more, core community members who I believe are not reflected in these current meetings. And I think that we would get a lot better of a pulse on our community if we were able to actually hear from them. The other issue revolving around public commentary is Engage Missoula's website and the terms and service agreement, which you have to agree to in order to public comment on the website, which allows for the city of Missoula to observe every web page that a user has visited. I think that this is a little bit alarming and concerning at the very least. I don't see why we need this type of information to be collected by the city or any governmental entity that's seeking public commentary. And also, its format, I believe, is somewhat cumbersome. So these are the general commentary issues that I wish to bring up right now. I'd also wish to comment on the budget later when that is when that public commentary period happens during the sim meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And I do not see anyone else in our attendee room wishing to speak at this time. So we will move on in our agenda to our consent agenda items here were approved in committees unanimously, and we save a little time on Monday evenings by considering these items at once. Ms. Rabine will read the list of consent agenda items aloud, and we will take comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine.
Thank you, Marion. Tonight we have 6 items on the consent agenda. One of them is super duper long, so be patient with me. The first item is claims that are those are the city's accounts payable. This week we're paying bills in the amount of $653,842.14 for checks that are dated tomorrow, August 4th, 2020. Number 2 is to set a public hearing on August 24th, 2020 on a resolution of the city of the Missoula City Council levying and assessing a special assessment and tax on the lots, pieces, and parcels of land that are situated within all the special lighting districts in the city of Missoula in the amount of $368,470.87 to defray the cost of street lighting and special improvement districts during the fiscal year of 2021. Number 3 is a tiny bit long. It's to set a public hearing for August 10th, 17th, 24th, and 31st, public hearing all 4 of those days on the fiscal year 2021 city budget and capital improvement program, the work plan and budgets for road district number 1, park district number 1, the downtown business improvement district, and the tourism business improvement district, and proposed increases to the permissive medical levy and the following resolutions that are increasing fees, and I'll read them. The first one is a resolution increasing fees relating to the review and processing of land use applications pursuant to city adopted regulations pertaining to zoning, subdivision, and floodplain services, business licensing, hazardous vegetation removal, engineering fees and permits related to work and use of the city public right-of-way. These fees are all generally administered through the Development Services Office. The second is a resolution that's increasing fees by 3% relating to special event permits and fingerprinting services that are performed by the police department. The third is a resolution that increases fees by 3% relating to wastewater industrial interceptor variance permit fees and waste hauler permits. These are fees that are charged by the wastewater division of the city in Public Works. A resolution that increases fees relating to fire inspection, plan checking, pyrotechnic display, and special event fees. Those fees are all charged by the fire department at the city. And finally, a resolution that increases fees by 4% that are related to city cemetery services, obviously from the cemetery. We're also setting a public hearing on September 2nd, 2020 on the following resolutions. It's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Missoula, Montana, levying and assessing the lots and parcels within the City of Missoula Road District number 1 for the costs associated with providing certain maintenance, purchasing and improvement services in fiscal year 2021 for city-owned facilities, land, and equipment under the responsibility and care of the City of Missoula's Public Works Department's Street Division, Central Services Vehicle Maintenance Division, and Development Services Engineering Division, providing for a method of assessment and providing for other matters that properly relate thereto. The second part of this is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Missoula levying and assessing the lots and parcels of land that are located in the City of Missoula's Park District number 1 for costs associated with providing certain maintenance, purchasing and improvement services in fiscal year 2021 for city-owned facilities, land and equipment under the responsibility and care of the Missoula Parks and Recreation Department, providing for a method of assessment and providing for other matters properly relating thereto. The third is a resolution that is levying assessments on the hotels located in the Tourism Business Improvement District of the City of Missoula for fiscal year 2021 in the amount of $2 per occupied room night in accordance with 7-12-1132 of Montana Code Annotated. There's a resolution levying taxes on the lots, pieces, and parcels of land that are located in the downtown business improvement in the City of Missoula for fiscal year 2021 in accordance with 7-12-1132 of Montana Code Annotated. Number 4 is an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code, Chapter 13.17, and a resolution amending the utility rate schedule. We're conducting first reading and a preliminarily adopting an ordinance. We're setting a public hearing for August 17th, 2020, and preliminarily adopting an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code, Chapter 13.17, entitled Water Line Loan Program by amending Section 13.17.050 to state utility rate schedule instead of Missoula Water Division rate schedule, and loan processing fee instead of administrative fee, and a resolution that amends the utility rate schedule to include a loan processing fee. That's all a really long way of saying that we're moving that fee from development services over to the water utility division. And number 5 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Columbine Controls for a continuous regeneration system for the resource recovery facility at the wastewater treatment plant, an amount not to exceed $35,000. And finally, number 6 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with Newfields for a groundwater modeling study in the Grant Creek Mullen Road area. That's for the stormwater division for an amount not to exceed $49,635.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any questions or comments from council members? Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. I just wanted to take the opportunity, as I described at the beginning of the BCAL meeting last week, to explain that we extended the public hearing dates through to the end of the month for final action at the end of August. And we did that because we basically saw that we have a land use item as well as what we were initially planning for final action on the budget, both occurring on the 24th, if I have my dates correct. And that certainly did not seem to be in the public's interest or any of anyone's interest for that matter. And so just wanted to provide that context for why we extended the public hearing dates for the budget so that those would not coincide on the same night. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Von Lossberg. All right, and if anyone in the audience would care to comment on consent agenda items, I will note that the question before the body this evening with regard to budget is to set the public hearings. So this is not the opportunity to weigh in on the merits of the budget, but whether or not you think there ought to be a public hearing on the budget. Mr. Larson.
Hi, yes. Nice to see you again and speak again. I would like very much to see the comments period in light of the pandemic extended even further for this budget, unless it's not allowed by law, because of the lack of participation that we're seeing in these community meetings. Like I said, normally I see, anywhere from 10 to 30 people participating in these meetings. And so far, since we've switched to the Zoom webinar format, I've seen a maximum of, 5 people calling in at once on any given subject. So again, I'd like to stress that we need more time to hear from our community in light of the situation we're in. The second thing I'd like to discuss is further down on the agenda. I believe it is
What's the item, Mr. Larson?
item 14, or I'm sorry, item 14.9. It's a vacation of public utility easement adjacent to lot 11 and 12 on block 60 in South Missoula. It's referred to in the documents as Bickford Street. And I can see that the person applying for it plans on creating a new building there. I'm wondering what type of building is going there and if it's going to be a residential building. I'm wondering if the city is going to employ forced inclusionary zoning on this vacation of right-of-way, such as they did on the 4th and Ronald development. That's
So that item is just a referral. It has not been before council yet. So the process is just beginning. There will be a staff report when the time comes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's it for now. Oh wait, the claims for August 4th. I've spoken with my Ward 3 representative, Gwen Jones. She was kind enough to reply to me today in regards to some of the expenditures for the police department. Again, I saw another $2,000 of Smith & Wesson 40 cal and .223 ammo, or assault rifle rounds. We are currently experiencing a national shortage of those rounds, the .223 rounds. So they're especially expensive right now. And us buying them up in bulk, if we're not using them actively, is the equivalent of me buying up all the toilet paper and paper towels in the local grocery store. If I'm just buying them in volume to buy them in volume, it's not necessarily a good thing for the rest of the community. There's also a $2,000 expenditure for less than lethal. I believe they're listed as less than lethal rounds, but I believe they're specifically the 40 millimeter rubber bullets that people may or may not be aware of. The police departments in other municipalities, such as Portland, Austin, Texas, and various other municipalities across the United States. These are the same less than lethal munitions that have been used egregiously by some police forces and have resulted in many head injuries, skull fractures, and just bad outcomes. So I asked Gwen Jones, and I've asked the Missoula Police Department specifically, when the last time a .223 round was actually used in the line of duty by the Missoula City Police Department. And I fully recognize that these are expenditures that were approved in last year's budget, and I've been told are part of a collective bargaining agreement with the police officers union. I fully support the police. I think that we should give them what they need and more. But I think these rounds in specific are not particularly needed. I'm still awaiting the report back from the Missoula Police Department as to when the last time an AR-15 or .223 round was actually used in the line of duty.
And we're on the other side of 3 minutes, Mr. Larson.
That's great. I think that collective bargaining agreement, as far as I've read, allots for 100 rounds per month per police officer. And so I would like to clarify if that is 100 rounds of their service weapon, i.e. their sidearm, or if it's actually 300 rounds or 400 rounds, 100 rounds for their sidearm, 100 rounds for their shotgun, 100 rounds for their AR-15, 100 rounds for their less than lethal munitions. So I'm just posing the question as to like what the real agreement says. And I haven't gotten any answers yet, but I'd love to hear some more dialogue about this, especially as we find ourselves in one of the safest communities in the state. The primary crime that's committed, as far as the last 2 years of data from the state in Missoula, Montana, is shoplifting and vandalism.
All right, I'm gonna have you wrap it up, Mr. Larson.
Sure thing. I just don't think that we can justify all these expenditures in a community whose crime problem is and civil unrest problem is pretty well documented to be calm. We're a peaceful, small, sleepy community. Thank you very much.
And seeing no additional comment on the consent agenda, we will move on to a roll call vote.
Mayor, do we really want to set the hearing on Wednesday, September 2nd?
Yeah, we did a special meeting, Counselor.
Okay.
We
I wasn't
really
at-
do, Jim.
Okay,
All right, on the consent agenda, Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Basika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Would you like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. We will move on to comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum, of which there are none this evening, nor do we have any special presentations. We have one public hearing. The state law and our own council rules set guidelines for inviting comment in a formal way on a variety of issues, and following a staff report on each of these items, council will consider and take public comment. This is a particularly this is a unique public hearing this evening, ladies and gentlemen. The tax credit process requires that we solicit comment from the public with regard to a project, but there is no council action to be taken. So this is our opportunity to engage formally in that process as part of the tax credit application. Ms. Pahan will offer a staff report this evening, I believe, and we'll take comment from there.
Good evening, Erin Pahan with the Office of Housing and Community Development. As the mayor mentioned, we're here tonight to discuss the Bellagio, a proposed low-income housing tax credit development that will bring over 200 permanently affordable homes to Missoula. The purpose of the public hearing, as the mayor laid out, is to gather feedback regarding whether or not the Bellagio meets a public benefit within our community. Demonstration of a public benefit or a community benefit is a necessary component that allows the project to qualify for a tax-exempt status as permanent affordable housing. The city of Missoula has provided significant support to this development to date through the allocation of federal entitlement funds and tax increment financing, upwards of $2 million total. Leveraging low-income housing tax credits is called out in our adopted housing policy, A Place to Call Home, as a key strategy for ensuring that we have homes Missoulians can afford. As Councilmember West brought up in our budget proceedings last week, low-income housing tax credits also provide us the ability to highly leverage private investment dollars into our community. For the $2 million that the city of Missoula has invested in this project, we will leverage well over $40 million of private funds, not tax funds, either at the local or the federal level, but true private funds into our community to help us meet our goals around homes, providing homes that Missoulians can afford. As a reminder, council is required to take no action at tonight's hearing. Comments received will be provided to the developers, who will then submit those comments with their tax exempt application to the state of Montana. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Keenan Witt with Blue Line Development to share just a brief description of the project prior to opening it up for that public comment.
Ms. Witt?
Hi, good evening. Bellagio. Erin, do you want me to show the presentation or just want me to give a project overview, which is easier?
I think that's up to you and council, whatever works best.
I know that most council has already seen the presentation, so I didn't want to be duplicative, but I can just hit the high points for you. Bellagio is, like Erin said, 200 units of affordable housing. It is a mix of 2, 3s, and 4 bedrooms. If you'll remember when I've presented on Trinity, we have a large number of 1 bedrooms on that project. So this is a nice mix of 2, 3s, and 4s, hitting those larger families. This site is over on the north side neighborhood, adjacent to I-90. It is a 4% tax credit project with both city and state home funding. It also has tax increment financing involved in a big contribution from both of the partners, the Missoula Housing Authority and Madison Crossing LLC. The total development budget for this project is hovering right over 54 million at this point. So it is a rather large development. And we have done everything to mitigate a really complicated site at this point, to do our best to have the most, a design that fits the budget, but also fits the need. And we are getting ready to turn around plans to development services and hopefully kick off construction spring of 2021. We will have a 20-month construction schedule, and then we'll start leasing up these units. So with that, does anybody have any questions for me? I know you guys have heard it before, and I appreciate you all listening to me time and time again when I bring projects to you.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. Does that conclude our staff presentation this evening? All right, with that, I will open the public hearing. Anyone who would care to comment on this topic, feel free. And Mr. Larson.
Hi again. I appreciate all the work that the city council and the mayor's office is doing to actually mitigate our affordable housing problem and crisis, I would call it, here in the city of Missoula. This is a city with the 33rd largest income disparity of any city in the United States. And that is a list that I don't think Missoula should find itself on, even at the bottom. Our income disparity is so great here, and looking at the details of this and the documents of this Bellagio project, which I support, but I support the 32 voucher housing units that were proposed to be included. I think that we need more of them. And I also think that this project is kind of focusing in the wrong areas of town. I see the north side as predominantly a low income area. And so when you drop 200 units and a $54,000 project there, it increases the taxable values of all the adjacent lots. Not to mention that this affordable housing project, the Bellagio, which is supposed to create affordable housing forever, right? Which is what we heard from Ms. Pehan just a minute ago, is not actually true. It's to be held for 42 years, which is a long time. I agree, like I still support this project, but I think there's issues with the numbers here. The numbers that they're creating, the wages they're creating this affordable housing number from are based on, in the documentation, it was portrayed as a single parent who works as a grocery store clerk and makes $15 to $19 an hour, or $14 to $17 an hour. So there's some problems there. No grocery store clerk that I know or that's in this community makes above $10 an hour right now. And I think that, again, we're creating affordable housing that is affordable only to people that come from outside of this community to move and work remotely, or create a new career, and that's well and fine, but we need to focus more on the lowest income brackets here and the people that kind of make Missoula what it is. Again, I do appreciate all the work, and I think that this is a step in the right direction, but I think that we need to reevaluate the numbers that we're taking from out of thin air to create these projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no additional hands up, I will conclude the public hearing. I see Ms. Jones. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm really supportive of this project. It's a big project. It will be a huge addition to the north side, and there will be a lot of impact from it, but I know that there's a lot of thought and process going into how to make it all work. We do have a huge need in Missoula, and our housing prices continue to go up. Our income has gone up some, our median average wages, but not nearly to the point of keeping pace with our housing prices. And frankly, my sense is that a year from now, there's going to be a much bigger gap due to this pandemic, as we're seeing real estate just a very hot market this summer. And we're going to have a lot of unemployment come fall, I think. So I understand how complicated the process is for applying for these tax credits and the amount of work that has to be done to queue it up when there is no guarantee of getting them. So I really appreciate that this community has worked so hard to do that, because these tax credits are really one of the few tools in Montana that help us get any kind of notable amount of housing on the ground. So I'm very supportive. My best wishes to you in Helena at the meeting, and I hope that this solid project is looked at closely by the board, and they recognize that there is great need in Missoula. We are surging forward in terms of our prices, and the gap is increasing here. So we really need to get this type of project in, because it's hurting people at this point, and it's only going to get worse unless we can take significant action like this. So thank you, Ms. Witt and Aaron Pehan. I appreciate all of your work on this.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo some of that. Thank you, Keenan. Thank you, Aaron, for the information. I've had the pleasure to sit in on the CDBG and home funding process and see the details for this going back a ways now. I think, in short, all you have to do is look at our housing policy that we adopted a bit over a year ago to understand the acute need for housing like this in the community. And it's unquestionable that a project like this goes to meet that need. And I particularly appreciated Ms. Witt's focus on the fact that the units, the 2, 3, and 4 bedroom, the more you go into looking at the needs in the community, the more you understand just how rare particularly the 3 and 4 bedroom units are for families. And so this definitely meets an acute need. So thank you.
Ms. Merritt.
Thank you, guys. I am also fully in support of this project and deeply grateful for all the work that Blue Line Development has done to work with Erin Pehan and her staff to give us hard, solid numbers that are based on the best information you have. I don't think there's any pulling anything out of thin air here. You guys have given this presentation a few times, and it's obvious to me that a lot of hard work has gone into trying to make this really complicated project work out so that we can bring another 200 units of affordable housing into our community. There's never going to be a perfect project that doesn't have any kinks, but you guys have done a great job. And I'm very hopeful that the tax credit is another piece that we can put into this. So good luck. Thanks.
Ms. West.
Hi, thank you. I want to start out, I guess, with a big giant thank you to the development team. I think this is a pretty amazing project to have put together. And I also I think it's awesome to be providing what's going to be family housing. I know what a challenge it is for folks to find units that are affordable that could accommodate, maybe multiple children and just, single mom or whatever arrangements families come in. And I just briefly want to also just talk to the importance of this project and between the Villaggio and the Trinity project, we are just making amazing strides at reaching our 5-year goal for affordable rental housing in our community. These numbers aren't just pulled out of thin air. The income limits are defined nationally. There's a very limited group of people who are eligible for these, and you have to make less than, I believe, 60% AMI, area median income, to reside in these. And I am happy if someone corrects me on those numbers. And I also just want to underscore just how expensive it is to develop affordable housing. I've been putting our city budget into the context of Villaggio units. So one Villaggio equals $55 million, and our city budget as a whole is 3.2 Villaggios, which puts everything into just a whole different perspective, and that, just the cost of bringing housing to the market it's huge. And I'm glad that people that are invested in our community are willing to take that on and bring quality housing to our neighborhood. And I will say the one thing I say always is that there is an inequity in what parts of town are meeting the housing need. And I think that that is, part of the system we have, because there is a favorable scoring to both home and CDBG funds and LIHTC projects if they are located in low-income neighborhoods. And that just means that the rest, we intentionally as a community need to make up that difference and make sure that affordable housing is available, across our community, because people need it across our community. And I wish everyone the best of luck at the Board of Housing, and I hope that this project comes to fruition.
Ms. Cheryl.
Yeah, hi. So I want to voice my support for it as well. I won't reiterate everything that my colleagues have said, but I would like for Erin to repeat the leveraging of public dollars number that she gave, because I did not write that down, and I think it is worth noting. But I'm really thankful to this team and that we're moving forward on dealing with a problem that I agree with Ms. Jones is only going to get worse with COVID.
Absolutely. And so there are some other grant funds that go into this project, and Ms. Witt would be able to better articulate all the nuances of those. But our funds, the city has invested $2 million. And as you heard Ms. Witt mention, this is a $54 million project. And so absent a few other small grant sources, we're leveraging, it sounds like, well over $50 million of private equity investment into the city of Missoula.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Anderson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and so many great comments by my fellow council members. I don't really have much to add other than I am supportive, and I appreciate the developers really trying to work with this challenging site. As I find myself saying frequently, the land bank is closed. We're not making any more land. And so the ability to find a large site like this to put this development on, to work with the geographic constraints, it is a great thing, and it will make all the difference. And for the families who get to call this place home, it will be life-changing. And so thank you for all the hard work. And that's, I add my support.
Ms. Herb.
Thank you. I too will be throwing my support behind this, and I wish the applicant great luck and Helena, but just a couple of things to keep in mind. From the Missoula Organization of Realtors, they estimate that our population grows roughly 2.5% per year. That is net of people leaving Missoula for other opportunities elsewhere. That translates to roughly 1,800 people per year, or 852 housing units per year. And just to kind of keep it in context, the development that we've seen in our city between subdivisions, TEDs, and city lots being approved falls far, far less than that. In 2016, we only had 63 come online. In 2017, we had roughly 130. In 2018, we had 96. I do not have numbers for 2019. So illustrating the absolute need for 200 units for the Bellagio and Trinity project just alone. And as my colleagues have said, some neighborhoods have been really carrying the responsibility. Thank you to Ward 1. Thank you to Ward 6 for doing your very best to make sure that we have roofs over our constituents across all. And I hope that the rest of us can continue to find it in our hearts and in our minds to be able to recognize that Missoula is here for everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Sorry to go again. I was just hoping Ms. Pan could clear up what might be confusing about the status of the 4% non-competitive tax credits for this project.
Yeah, so this project, unlike other tax credit projects that we have seen come before council for various hearings, is using a 4% tax credit. At the state of Montana, the 4% tax credit is non-competitive. So others may remember projects that applied for a 9% tax credit, were not awarded funding, and weren't able to proceed. The 4% is non-competitive. And so if the project is eligible, they receive the tax credit allocation. This project has already applied for their tax credit allocation and received a reservation. So there's no risk that they won't receive tax credit financing.
All right, seeing no additional discussion, we will move on. Thank you, folks, for being with us tonight to participate in that public hearing. We have an item for final consideration this evening. That means we have had a public hearing on the item, and that hearing has been held open until now. I am closing the public hearing on the Roxy Theater Annex and Garden Tavern conditional use. At this point, I would entertain a motion. Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mayor. I move approval of the tavern conditional use request for the Roxy Theater at the Roxy Annex space and the Roxy Garden space in accordance with Missoula City Zoning Ordinance Title 20, Sections 20.10.020D, 20.40.110, 20.85.070, and 20.105050H, based on the findings of fact and subject of the conditions of approval. And I'd like to comment on the motion, if I may.
Mr. Hess.
Thanks. This is the Roxy Theater, which is a great cultural institution in Missoula, adapting in part to the pandemic to create a wonderful outdoor space that will provide an opportunity for people to find a little bit of respite from the strange world we live in right now. And it's also an opportunity for them to expand their successful operation and create a space immediately adjacent for private events and other offerings. So straightforward application. There was no concern raised during the Land Use and Planning Committee. Really proud of how the Roxy's been able to expand over the last few years, and I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Mr. Von Lossberg.
Yeah, I'll just quickly lend my support. The Roxy is part of what makes Missoula Missoula in the best possible sense, and I wish the applicants every success moving forward.
And Ms. Jones?
Just wanted to briefly say, first of all, thank you, Ms. McCafferty, for a great presentation. I think you really clarified what can be complicated, and that's a great communication skill. And because of that, it's been a really clean process. And I'm super supportive of this. I think the Roxy has been a wonderful, wonderful entity on the hip strip, and to expand and have the outdoors and to do it in such a way so that they're accommodating the pandemic is really thoughtful. And I look forward to going to some movies down there. So thanks for all of this, and I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Ms. Hart.
Thank you. The Roxy is an icon for our community, and I think it's just wonderful to see them adapt in today's environment. I really do appreciate that. I know it's been very difficult with COVID to not necessarily have the same kind of business model as you once did. So, talk to you, and I wish you best of luck.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we've had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
And Anderson.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That's 12 ayes.
And that item is approved. The conditional use is approved. I will pass on communications from the mayor this evening. We'll begin comments from council members with Mr. Von Lossberg.
Pass.
Ms. Cheryl,
Pass.
Ms. Jones,
I'll pass.
Ms. Merritt,
I would just like to really give a big thank you to Marty Rabine and her crew, who managed to work through all the technical issues that we've had these past several months to make these meetings possible, and then to make the next step and get our Wednesday committee meetings in this webinar format. I know it took a lot of work, and I really appreciate it. I have felt like we have had meetings where we've had a lot of participation, whether that's a result of the pandemic and the isolation. We're getting hundreds of emails, and so people are engaging with us in a lot of different ways. I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. I get messages in other ways from people. So if it's, I don't know if it's just the times that we're living in and these issues are more important and are really prompting people to participate more, but I feel like we have a high level of public engagement right now. And Marty, I think it's largely due to the great work that you and your crew have done. So thank you very much, and let's keep it going.
Mr. Contos,
Pass.
Ms. Hart,
I'll pass tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Becerra,
Pass. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson,
I will pass as well. Thank you.
Ms. West,
Pass.
Mr. Ramos.
I'll just second Ms. Merritt's comments. Thank you, Marty.
And Ms. Vasika,
Pass. Thank you.
and Mr. Hess.
Pass. Thanks.
All right, we will move on then to committee reports. Items here did not receive unanimous support in council committees, and we'll consider these items after a motion is made. This evening, before we make a motion, I will ask that Mr. Adams do a brief presentation for us, and then I'll entertain a motion from Ms. Jones and have you all consider that. Mr. Adams.
Hi, thank you for having me, and apologies for how familiar this will sound to those of you that saw me in ANF last week. I'm John Adams. I'm a Grants Administrator 3 in the Office of Housing and Community Development. I coordinated due diligence and consideration of the purchase of the Scott Street parcel with a team that included Aaron Pahan, Director of HCD, Jeremy Keene, Public Works Director, Dale Bickle, the CAO, and Ellen Buchanan of the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and with advice from council. And what we have before the committee and city council to consider today are two closely related resolutions. Try and put them on screen here. First, would approve a buy-sell agreement between the city and Scott Street Limited Liability Partnership, the Scott Street Partners. And the effect would be to direct city staff to complete the purchase of 19 acres of land at White Pine Sash on the north side. The second resolution would approve the issuance of $6.6 million worth of tax increment revenue bonds to pay for the purchase to be repaid by tax increment. I want to mention before we go further that for any members of the public interested to learn more about the project and if it moves forward to engage in the discussion of future use of the site, the website here at Engage Missoula is going to be our homepage, the place to find all the information about the project and provide feedback. So for example, the investigations we completed into the property's environmental liabilities are available there. The Scott Street parcel is outlined here in blue. It does not have a street address, but it's at the intersection of Charlo and Scott Street. And it extends all the way to Bulwer Street. It's directly north of the existing city shops and of White Pine Sash Park. This is a picture from 1964 of what White Pine looked like in its heyday. This is the portion that we seek to purchase or propose purchasing. White Pine Sash operated for a little under 100 years on the north side, and it manufactured windows and doors. On the south end of the facility, near where Scott Street Bridge is now, they had a facility where they would dip the wood into a preservative formula that was basically diesel fuel with pentachlorophenol dissolved into it. There's some stories that they may have allowed that to drip dry, but regardless, the ultimate result was that there was quite a bit of contamination of the perched aquifer right in that area. And then additionally, the distribution of dioxin and penta throughout the property more generally. The property is a state Superfund facility, the Missoula White Pine Sash State Superfund facility. And that means that DEQ supervises cleanup at the property, Montana Department of Environmental Quality. HUDIG Building Products, we'll just call them HUDIG, is the last of successive operators at White Pine, and they're responsible for completing the cleanup, financially responsible for completing the cleanup that DEQ requires. For the Scott Street parcel, what DEQ required was that HUDIG clean the eastern half, the surface soil in the eastern half of the parcel to residential standards, and the surface soil in the western half to commercial standards. And HUDIG has completed both of those actions. So what you can see here on this site, on this slide, is that this half, the eastern half, surface soil has been cleaned to residential standards and it's ready for redevelopment as housing. Western half is not acceptable for housing development, but is commercial standards, so you could do city shops, for example, or other commercial industrial applications there. The thing you can see on this slide is the LTU, or land treatment unit. One of the things that DEQ required in its record of decision in 2015 was that HUDIG excavate from the hotspot and take some of the most contaminated soil and put it here in a pit they'll build. It'll be basically a dug and bermed pit with an impermeable lining. And they'll simply aerate it and cause the harmful hazardous pollutants in there to biodegrade so that as the pollution attenuates, they can simply dispose of the soil off-site. Import for our purchase is that until the LTU is installed and then removed, we won't be able to use that southwest corner of the property. If the city acquires the parcel, we'll need to do master planning for the property that engages the community and the neighborhood. I think that planning will need to take into account both neighborhood concern and excitement. I know that people in the neighborhood are worried about traffic, about impacts on schools. I believe that they're also excited about the prospect of being able to get a cup of coffee without driving across the Scott Street Bridge. So I think that staff's starting point is that given the housing crisis, we would hope that redevelopment on the east half would have a substantial housing component, housing that Missoulians can afford. On the west half, staff anticipates that Public Works would consolidate its yard operations here at White Pine, potentially with the Parks Department or with other outside partners. If we realize something along those lines, there'd be a number of really important benefits for Missoulians. The first is that 9 acres of housing in the city core in a lovely neighborhood is not easy to find. It represents an opportunity to implement what we've committed to do in Missoula's housing policy and in the North Reserve Scott Street Master Plan, and to work with the north side and west side neighborhoods to shape development of this gateway to the Scott Street district. Second, consolidation of operations would help Public Works function more effectively and efficiently, cost effectively, and would also likely free up other properties for higher and better uses. So what you can't see pictured here is the Mountain Waters headquarters on West Broadway, 2.2 acres that certainly could be redeveloped for mixed use and housing. That's a better use of that property than the current situation. And then you can see in the red, north of Scott Street, LLP, about 30 acres that Public Works currently uses for yard operations. And the Public Works facility plan envisions that if we can consolidate down here on Scott Street, that much of this property would be freed up for other purposes. I want to note here too that the city, I think, is uniquely able to lead redevelopment of the Scott Street parcel. The principal risk with this property is not really environmental liability, but probably the time to develop. Any project here will need to work with DEQ to keep surface soil and subsurface soil segregated during redevelopment. And we'll need the LTU removed before we can redevelop the west half. There's enough uncertainty and potential for enough delays and complications that private developers will really struggle to be able to tackle this property when there are greenfields west of Reserve Street that just don't have those kinds of complications, and where they can promise the private capital that supports their projects a relatively certain timeline. We think that but for the city stepping in here, redevelopment will still be years away. And because of those complications, it could take a form, a simpler form, a form that the neighborhood would not really welcome. Staff pursued the Scott Street parcel as a result of planning and direction given in other city documents and contexts. And I wanted to highlight some of those for you here. As I noted, this implements direction provided to the city in our city housing policy, A Place to Call Home, which recommended land banking, creating opportunities to support affordable rental opportunities, and taking advantage of the financing that can come with location within the opportunity zone and the support that could come within location within an urban renewal district. So this is a place where we can layer a number of different tools together to promote the construction of housing that Missoulians can afford. Project is consistent with the city's strategic plan and fits beautifully with the developing public works facility plan. It's consistent with the north side, west side neighborhood plan, which is a little dated, but calls for mixed use development, affordable development, and more than anything, high quality development with neighborhood input for White Pine Sash. Project is a direct outgrowth of the extensive public engagement that led to the North Reserve Scott Street Master Plan. Here's one page from the North Reserve Scott Street Master Plan, and you can see that that process yielded for this right here, the White Pine Sash parcel, the concept of residential and live work kind of transition between the commercial and industrial functions further west and the existing neighborhood here to the east. The master plan sees the Scott Street district being developed with, quote, rich residential neighborhoods that respect and respond to the character of the north side neighborhood and provide a mix of housing opportunities, live-work developments, new apartments, townhomes, and condominiums will help to transition between purely commercial and purely residential areas, but keep them connected through shared amenities, such as a small community retail and open space node along Scott Street. Wanted to note as well that this opportunity to include residential at Scott Street is only available to us because of community advocacy. DEQ originally intended to require HUDG to clean the site up only to commercial standards, not to residential standards. But the community came together to request and importune DEQ to require something better. So NMCDC, since their founding in 1996, has pushed DEQ on this. City staff, local residents, city county health, the Board of County Commissioners, the editorial board of the Missoulian, and even the city council, or perhaps especially the city council, pushed DEQ to clean the whole property up to residential use, residential standards. So we only got half of that. Unfortunately, DEQ heard us, but did not give us everything we desired. But the east half is now available for residential cleanup, and that's a result of community work. So down to the nitty gritty, the city signed a buy-sell agreement with Scott Street LLP in December of 2019 with a purchase price of $6,380,540. That buy-sell had a number of contingencies that included appraisal and the property appraised at purchase price. Due diligence, which staff is satisfied with. Amendment of deed restrictions. There were existing deed restrictions between HUDG and Scott Street Partners that prohibited residential development on the property. And we've established a mechanism that will eliminate that for the east half upon purchase. And then finally, city council approval, which obviously is what's before us right now. Cost of the purchase would be covered through issuance of $6.6 million in tax increment revenue bonds. Their net debt service would be approximately $590,000 a year. The current taxes on the property are about $22,000 a year. We think that it's quite likely that we'll be able to recoup that. Most of the development scenarios that staff has looked at include some kind of private component. But for now, that's the story. And the North Reserve Scott Street ERD was created in 2014. It has a current sunset date of 2035. If the bond is issued, the sunset date would be 2045. So just to reiterate and give you a sense of how we see the project playing out from start to finish, phase 0 was really all the planning that led to the interest in the property. Phase 1 was the negotiation of the buy-sell, due diligence, navigation of issues with HUDG and DEQ. Phase 2 is consideration by MRA and City Council. Phase 3, if approved, would be the planning and the site use and the evaluation of the necessary infrastructure, transportation grid, and then leading into redevelopment of the east half of the Scott Street parcel for residential and other community-oriented uses. And phase 4 would be redevelopment of the west half to centralize city public works operations. So staff recommends approval. We would ask that you approve the buy-sell agreement completed in December and authorize the acquisition of the property, and then approve the issuance of tax increment revenue bonds to fund the purchase. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Adams, for that presentation. And Ms. Jones, a motion, please.
There are two motions, so I'll just make both motions.
Please
The first, okay, the first one is I make the motion that we approve the buy-sell agreement between the city and Scott Street LLP and authorize the mayor to complete the property acquisition by executing ancillary and consequent documents necessary to close the acquisition, including but not limited to covenants and contingency releases between Scott Street LLP and the city. The property is located on the west side of Scott Street and immediately north of the City Street Division office. And the second motion is I make the motion that we adopt a bond resolution entitled resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $6,604,000 principal amount of tax increment senior subordinate urban renewal revenue bonds, North Reserve Scott Street Urban Renewal District, consisting of $3,302,000 Series 2020A and $3,302,000 taxable Series 2020B to finance the acquisition of the Scott Street property and prescribing the form and terms thereof and the security therefore to be used for purchases of property from Scott Street LLP, costs associated with acquisition and costs associated with issuance of the bonds. And I would like to speak to that.
Ms. Jones.
Thank you. This is a big project that I know the city has worked on for years. And we've been talking about affordable housing for, I think, decades, you know, on city council, but I think the last 5 to 10 years it has been heightened. And frankly, the last 2 months, it has become an even bigger topic of discussion in Missoula. So I'm glad a lot of attention is being paid to it. And this project is huge. This is a huge boon to Missoula in terms of moving the needle in terms of affordable housing. It's an opportunity to buy basically 18 acres, but with the consolidation of public works, city shops, possibly some parks, equipment, Missoula Water, and possibly Mountain Line bus. There is a possibility of translating that purchase of 18 acres into more along the lines of 30 to 40 acres ultimately for development. So it's smart, it's efficient, but the incredibly important thing is this really is in the urban center of Missoula now. It used to be, you know, decades and decades ago, this was an outlying section. No longer. Missoula is growing so rapidly. This is in the intersection of our urban core. And to have that potential for development that is walkable to downtown, walkable to schools, accessible to open spaces, this is just a great thing for Missoula. So I'm very much in support of it. I foresee there being a master plan development, hopefully a master plan that looks at not only creating housing and service centers, but creating a community that's a really livable area that focuses on quality of life. And I think one key component of that will be affordable housing. So it's just a wonderful opportunity that we have, and I am glad that the city is seizing it. This also is great in terms of future development for affordable housing because it really has the trifecta. It's an opportunity zone, which will pull in investment. There's MRA as a resource, and it's also a qualified census tract, is my understanding, for tax credits for housing. So that makes it incredibly strategic. And Mr. Adams, thank you for your presentation. And I really appreciate you also discussing the fact that because this is a Superfund site, the private sector is not knocking on the door trying to buy it. Private sector has to move much more quickly in terms of development, and this takes time. Part of it has been done, parts still need to be cleaned up. It takes time, and not only that, but it takes a high amount of communication with other governmental entities. So to make that work, this is a scenario where I think government is far better situated, and this will benefit our community greatly. So thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all of the work for years with the administration and the different departments that's gone into pulling this project forward. I'm very much in support of it, and thank you.
Further discussion, Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question and then a couple of follow-up comments, if that's permissible.
Yes, sir.
So just on the MRA website and then also in the Missoulian, it was reported that the North Reserve Scott Street URD had a sunset date of 2042, not 235, which means this would extend the district by 3 years and not 10 years. Am I misreading something, or is that presentation just off a little bit?
Ms. Buchanan, you're out there.
I am. I'm trying to unmute. So the the Urban Renewal District was created in 2014. It had a 15-year life at its creation, which took us to 2029. The current sunset date is 2035 because of some bonds that were issued several years ago. And if a 25-year bond is issued in 2020, then the sunset date would move to 2045. 25 years from 2020. So the numbers that you saw either were not brought up to current time considering this project or were inaccurate. And I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Okay, yeah, I can send you that. It just said that it was 2042 that it sunsetted, so I assume that the bonds that we sold extended it to 42, and this is only extending it 3 years and not 10. So thank you for that clarification. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support this tonight. I know that my fellow council members are certainly supporting this with the best intentions, and again, I think it comes down to Keynesian versus Austrian. I also greatly support the consolidation of city services. Unfortunately, with this project, I kind of feel like I'm signing a blank check because I don't really know what's going to happen after we do this. So it seems a lot like Congress does all the dang time, where they pass a bill to find out what's in it. And that is one of the things I hate most about government. We don't even really know exactly what's going to happen to the buildings if we do consolidate, because we do own a substantial amount of buildings that had just been mentioned that would be vacated if we moved into this. So I don't know if that's going to be sold out to the private sector. I don't know if we're going to partner with something. And whenever we do something like this, it always seems like it costs more and takes longer, and a lot of things go wrong when we do something like this. So that's first and foremost. Second, I don't necessarily think the city has the expertise in property development or development deals. I think it's best to leave that to the private sector. I think that we have enough on our plate right now trying to manage the variety of things from public safety with the police officers, from fire, from infrastructure. I just don't think that we should be in the development business. Again, it's an ideological difference, as Jordan very respectfully pointed out last meeting. And this extends the district by 10 years. I had in my notes as 3, but blocks up potential remittances with a large amount of debt service, where we're paying about $4 million in interest on this purchase over 25 years. So to have affordable housing, you have to be efficient, no matter if it's government or no matter if it's the private sector. So I don't care who's paying for it. If you want to have affordable housing, you have to have a good deal on land, and you have to have very, very efficient structure in a business sense in order to get something. So I get that with the city doing it, we might think it's efficient because it's taxpayer money, but we still have to have those underlying efficiencies that only the private sector can produce, and maybe even in some cases the nonprofit. And that could be the plan, but I really don't know that yet. And I do not support land banking or subsidies. Mr. Mayor, you stated in the last meeting that the city's been in the land banking business for years. I know you and I have had our differences about that, but the reason why I think land is going up so much right now is because of our land banking practices. So let's just say, Mr. Mayor, you and I became suddenly very rich, and we decided to buy 10% of all of the gold in the world and bank it up in a bank somewhere. That would drive up the cost of gold. And to a smaller scale, that's what we've been doing in the city of Missoula for many, many years. We've been banking up land, taking it off the table for development, driving up the price due to supply side economics. And I think that this is just going to add fuel to the fire that we started with that practice in the first place, unfortunately. So I know that the government always does things with the best intentions, but they always seem to have unintended and devastating consequences. So that's exactly why I'm not going to be supporting this tonight. I just think that it's to further the point of the private sector not being able to do this and the government being able to do it faster than the private sector. Kind of seems like the government's playing favorites by putting up barriers for those that are not within their inner circle, but then allowing the government to have a better road to development than the private sector would. So I think those unintended barriers, which kind of unfortunately imbalances the scales of competition favoring the government, which shouldn't even be in the development business in the first place, is really sad to the overall state of the economy. But again, I understand that this is done with the best of intentions. I'm just not going to be able to support it tonight. So thank you, guys.
Ms. Vasika.
Yes, thank you. I second pretty much everything that my colleague, Mr. Ramos, said. I did want to add some things, though. You're right. Like Miss Anderson said earlier today, the land bank is closed and Missoula is not making any more land. And by snatching or seizing this property, like earlier Miss Jones said, we are increasing housing prices and adding to the affordable housing problem. And you know, Missoula Valley only has so much land, and if the city keeps seizing up the available land, it leaves the majority of the Missoulians or the average Missoulians in the dust. So I cannot support this motion.
Ms. West.
Hi, thank you. So I wholeheartedly support the purchase of this land by the city of Missoula. I think that this outcome is the best possible outcome that could happen for the site. It has taken decades of advocacy by the community for this to be a site that can inhabit like homes for people. This is a whole new, I mean, this wasn't even a possibility a few years ago, and I think that the redevelopment of the site with the city's leadership is the only way that the neighborhood has any idea of what the future holds for the site, and the only way that the neighborhood has any sort of input. If this were to be in private hands, a developer can do whatever the zoning allows, and as long as it meets all of our regulations, which means that the neighborhood has no input or even any notice of what will be happening here. And I think that having this in city ownership will allow for the really robust discussion of what this neighborhood needs and wants. And I, again, just want to stress that we don't maximize the units in the space, but really maximize the many needs that our neighborhood has, because affordable housing is one of many needs. People also, you know, need different types of affordable housing, and we have goals for homeownership in our housing policy, as well as a tiered income levels. And I think that there's amount of creativity that come from this space that can't come through other processes, and I really look forward to what that holds. So yeah, I'll stop with that.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. First off, I want to thank John Adams for the excellent presentation in committee and again tonight. It really does a great job at laying out the history and the opportunity. Though I know everyone wants me to refrain from telling spaceship stuff, I can't help. My colleague, Mr. Ramos, makes me think of the work I did at JPL and the very best of partnerships between the government and the private sector, and how much we tend to only talk about the extremes on either end and not the partnership. And I think this is an opportunity that's going to be a fantastic partnership, and it's appropriate. This is an infrastructure deficient area. We've talked about that a lot with some of the other residential development that has recently gone in there. MRA is a fantastic tool to help remedy situations like that, and can help in this case. If there's a sort of a theme to the opportunities associated with this project, I want to focus on the theme of the importance of citizen voices and community voices and what they can achieve in collaboration with their government. I thought it was great that Mr. Adams mentioned the perched aquifer and its contamination, and there's an intersection there with the water utility acquisition and what we recognized in local government around deficient maintenance of that infrastructure, and that aquifer is contaminated because of that situation with leaky water mains, and we're remedying that situation under public ownership and protecting one of the most vital resources in the city, which is our aquifer. It was neighborhood voices 6 years ago, and even a little bit longer, including my ward mate Heidi's, Miss West's actions and advocacy that helped DEQ change its plan And I really appreciate John describing that. One of the very first things I did on council was write and carry the resolution that's attached in the documents. And I am very proud of that resolution, but not because I had the opportunity to sponsor it or write it. I'm proud of it because it gave voice to my neighbors' concerns and vision around their neighborhood and the opportunity there. And I really want to specifically thank Bob Oakes with the North Missoula Community Development Corporation. While I was running for council and after being on council, I've had countless conversations with Bob around this property. He was the institutional memory, if you will, relative to the history and both the vision and opportunity going forward. And I think tonight is a great celebration of Bob's continued attention to this opportunity, and the neighborhood rallied around it. And I just think it's a great success. Heidi mentioned that this is an opportunity in this particular way that we're pursuing it for neighborhood voices to now play another important role in helping shape what occurs here. And the community and the neighborhood deserves that. And this is a process that will make sure that those voices are recognized. So wholly supportive and grateful.
Mr. Hess.
Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to comment on this and to support it tonight. There's a couple of word choices that my colleagues have made that I take issue with, so I want to start with those. First, I think that efficiency is a term that is oftentimes tossed around with people who don't like government and they want to use it to make government smaller. And I think we've got a hard-working group of people that are doing their level best to provide public service as effectively as possible. These people are innovative, they're responsive, they're smart, they're dedicated public servants, and they're really damn efficient. We have a really good crew working on this project and every city project, and I believe that we are efficient. Second, I don't believe that we're taking away land from developers and providing it to the inner circle. We use requests for qualifications, requests for proposals. We use scrutiny. We use objective measures to find developer partners when we go to work with the private sector. It is fair, it is balanced, and it is certainly no favoritism nor any kind of inner circle. Lastly, I don't believe that snatching or seizing is appropriate terminology for what we're doing here. We're buying a parcel that we have contemplated buying for years, that we've been involved with for a decade or more. We're doing that with great care and with due diligence, and we're turning that around to meet a community goal. We are not, to snatch or to seize implies that there is some nefarious goings on here, and we are approaching this with public interest in mind, and we are doing that in order to solve a community problem. It is apparent to me from the emails that we've been getting over the past number of weeks, we have received dozens, perhaps hundreds of email comments in support of investing in housing that people can afford. This action is directly responsive to those requests, and it is a good action. There have also been some comments that this project, that the city purchasing this parcel is interfering with the free market, as if the free market is some pure sacred entity that remains uncorrupted by the heavy hand of government. And I think there's intervention in the market all the time. There are subsidies, there are policies, there is legislation. The market is heavily influenced by government action. And this is a situation where we have massive factors in play here in Missoula that are way outside our control, that are driving the cost of our housing market. We have the desirability of our community. We have supply issues. We have so many things that are making it that we really need to respond decisively in order to get a handle on the cost of housing. This action is a step toward getting a handle on our housing market. This is decisive. This is clear leadership on our housing issues. So there certainly are, Mr. Ramos is correct, and I respectfully disagree, that there certainly are differences of philosophy and opinion on how to approach this. I believe that the only way we're going to get out of our housing challenges is by decisive leadership at the local government level. And I believe that this action is that. So I'm really proud of our staff for putting this together. I'm really proud of my colleagues, Ms. West in particular, for her work on this early on before she was on council, Mr. Von Lossberg. And I'm proud of this action and I'm proud to support it. Thank you.
Ms. Becerra.
I should know by now to never follow Jordan Hess's comments because it's hard to to beat that. But I just want to reiterate some of the comments that my colleagues have expressed. For over a decade, I lived just a few blocks south of this site, and it gives me great joy to see a piece of land that was a contaminated site with so much potential. I don't believe that this is taking land. I don't believe this is seizing land. I don't believe it's snatching land. I believe that this is thoughtful, sustainable planning practice. And I believe that by having it be in the ownership of the city, we are giving our city residents more possibilities for meaningful public engagement. We are enabling and encouraging the community of the north side and the west side to fully participate and to a large degree, plan this site. So I think that that is something that oftentimes it's not as doable or as easy when the land is in private ownership. So I fully support this. Thank you to everyone who's worked so diligently and to get to this point. Brownfield redevelopment is not easy. Oftentimes you have private investors trying to have a quick return on investment. And I think that this piece of land under city ownership allows for more flexibility. So I am fully supportive, and thank you to everyone who worked so hard on this for so long.
Ms. Merritt.
I just want to say thanks to my colleagues, Heidi and Jordan, Mirta, Brian. I also support this, and I definitely don't have any more eloquent words than what's already been said. Thanks.
Right, I don't see any additional discussion from council. I'm sorry, Ms. Vasika.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that I do respectfully disagree with what Mr. Hess said about how the government needs to interfere with the free market. Government interference with the free market doesn't really make the free market free. So I just wanted to point that out, that I disagree with that. But you did say everything very eloquently, and I got to get that skill going. Thank you.
And Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify if I insinuated inner circle meaning a bunch of cronies within the city government. That is not what I was trying to state. I was just trying to state that there was inner circle being the government, not some sort of corruption within who we choose as developers. So I just wanted to clarify that and apologize if it came off that way, Mr. Hess. So.
All right, seeing no additional discussion, we have 3 attendees. Are any of you folks interested? And SK Rossi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, City Council. My name is SK Rossi, R-O-S-S-I. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Policy at the ACLU of Montana. And I wanted to chime in, hopefully briefly, in support of this proposal. A couple of years ago, the ACLU of Montana did an enormous research project focused on the probation and parole system in Montana. And as part of that research, we interviewed over 100 formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated people and asked them what the barriers were for them in terms of successfully reentering their communities and feeling supported and staying out of jail and going back to jail for a second or third or fourth time. And, you know, we actually expected to hear a lot more about the criminal legal system itself. But what we heard from those folks was that the biggest barriers to reentry and being a successful member of the community once they've been released from jail and prison were housing, transportation, employment access, and access to mental health and addiction services. So when I see affordable housing proposals like you have before you right now, I view this as a public safety initiative. We've heard time and time again from the communities we work with, including the formerly incarcerated community, that housing is an enormous barrier for them. I mean, I talked to one couple, a couple who had a small child, and the husband had gotten out of prison and wanted to go back and live with his, or maybe they were engaged, his fiance and their child. And as soon as he moved back into their apartment, their landlord kicked him out. They ended up living in their van, and because they were living in their van, they got their child taken away. So they were forced to choose between remaining together as a family or finding housing or having their child back. And I offer that as an example because, quite honestly, the free market and private developers are not doing anything to help housing issues in Missoula, and in fact are making it much worse, especially for people who have criminal records. So from the ACLU's perspective, anything that increases affordable housing in Missoula, and I hope that as you move forward on this project and it gets further along, you'll make sure it's the least restrictive as possible for people with criminal records, because honestly, folks who are coming out of jail and prison need housing just as bad as the next guy. But we see this definitely as a public safety initiative and a huge step toward making sure people have what they need to feel safe and healthy in Missoula. And we see that as public safety, making sure people have what they need to survive and thrive. So I thank you for this proposal. It's a great step in the right direction. I hope to see more things like this in the future, and I appreciate it. So thank you all.
Thank you. Any other attendees care to comment? Don't see any hands up. All right, so I will just note a couple of things. I have worked with the folks who have owned this property for a long time, Scott Street Partners, since I first took this office in 2006, and we had one development proposal that went belly up. That was a private developer who was not able to make the deal work for a variety of reasons, not the least of which they couldn't take care of the contaminated soils. Nor could they necessarily wait for the record of decision from the Department of Environmental Quality. We worked with a number of other developers to try to broker a deal between owners and the development community, each of which ground to a halt for a variety of reasons. And so we let the market, which ain't free, take its best shot at this. And over time, as we realized some of the opportunities that this site presented the city of Missoula in terms of effectiveness of operation and our ability to support affordable housing in the community, I said we need to buy it. And so the staff, the people you heard from during the course of your committee meeting, folks who are on this call, Mr. Adams, Mr. Bickle, Ms. Buchanan, Ms. Pahan, we had folks in Public Works, we had folks in the attorney's office, all came together to sort out what could be a pretty complicated deal and put together a package for you to consider that solves for a lot of problems. So I'm grateful to hear the kind of support that we're hearing this evening from all of you. And in light of all this discussion, I think it's time for a roll call vote on both of the motions. Ms. Raybon.
Okay, I presume we're doing on both the motions, Marion, or separately?
Let's do them separately for the record, please, Ms. Raybon.
Okay, so the first motion is the buy-sell agreement between the city and Scott Street LLP. And we'll start this round of voting with Contos.
No.
Hart.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Masika.
No.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
and Becerra.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes and 3 absent. Hang on, we'll save that vote and move on to the next.
Point of order.
That was 9 ayes and 3 nays, Ms. Rayby.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, sorry, 9 ayes and 3 nays. Okay, on the second motion, which is the bond resolution, the motion is to approve the bond resolution. We'll start this round with Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
No.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Masika.
No.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
No.
And would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes and 3 nays.
And both motions are approved. We don't have any additional committee reports this evening, nor do we have any items of new business. Are there any additional items to be referred? Seeing none of those, any miscellaneous communications, reports, or announcements? Seeing none of those, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your service, and we will be adjourned.